The one question I had with Tet McMillan was, we really want to see him get that Drake London power slot role in Carolina. And so now Adam Thielen traded, Jalen Coker hurt. You have Hunter Renfrow, who has an autoimmune disorder. He has colitis. I have Crohn's disease. Like, I don't know. I can't be a slot wide receiver. You know, I'm just on the toilet way too much. And I have to eat sauerkraut and monitor my diet. Can we trust Hunter Renfrow in the slot? I don't know. Dude is a filthy route runner. He looks like my cousin, freak route runner. Dude, he needs to be on Dancing with the Stars, like all-time great route runner. What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Yo. What is going on? You are listening to the School of Scott podcast. Today we are podcasting on hard mode. I was talking to a friend. Well, actually, that's not right. I don't know that he's a friend, but someone with a big name podcast where if you heard the name of the podcast, you would probably recognize it. And I asked him he's a listener of the School of Scott podcast. I asked him for advice and he said, "You're almost too prepared. You kind of overload me with the dang stats. I would love if you could just get on the mic and riff and wing it and bro out." And so that's what I'd like you to do for the next podcast. So this is for them. We're just going to bro out. We're going to wing it. I'm going to give you my Exodia plays. This is the Exodia play reveal podcast. This is not the Zodiac reveal, which is what some people think it is. It's not. It's the Exodia plays reveal podcast. What is an Exodia? It is a very nerdy reference to the card game Yu-Gi-Oh, which is like Pokemon. It's like one of those sort of nerdy games. I was not a big Yu-Gi-Oh player, but one of my friends post-college was a professional Yu-Gi-Oh player. He was one of the best in the country. Although I don't know, he also got caught cheating. So maybe that's not the case. Maybe he was just a fraud and a cheater. I really have no idea. But I did watch the first season when I was a kid growing up. And so summoning Exodia, you had to like have all 5 cards and you summon Exodia and then you automatically win if you have all 5 cards of Exodia. And so that's what my draft guide has become. The first ever Exodia was rookie season Kareem Hunt, who smashed. And then I think the next year it was sophomore year Christian McCaffrey. And then next year it was sophomore year Lamar Jackson. And so my Exodia just like kept crushing to extreme degrees. And it became a thing. And so people were like, who's your Exodia? And now it's like evolved, morphed into this thing where it's not just one player. It's not just 5 players. It's like 7 to 10. And it just means Exodia. What is Exodia? It just means like the player you don't want to leave your draft without. You know, like your must draft player, your most extreme value. And so today we're podcasting on hard mode. I don't have any notes prepared. We're really just free balling it. And to make it even more hard mode, I just went to our local Mexican place. Shout out El Tiempo in Houston. World famous, maybe not world famous, but at least Houston famous El Tiempo. I went there. I just wanted a quesadilla. And the bartender made the order wrong for some other person. I was like, "Hey, I have this extra margarita. Do you want this margarita?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll take it. Yeah, thanks." And then they gave me my quesadilla, and I'm like, "Yo, this is like an extra large quesadilla. I just wanted a small quesadilla." And they're like, I'm sorry, I could take it off your bill, or I could just give you another free margarita. And I was like, all right, I'll take the So we're a little tipsy right now, recording the School of Scott podcast, and we're flying in blind, which I don't want to do because this is why I didn't have a podcast for like the first 10 years of my existence in the fantasy football space, is because I feel like I lose 10 IQ points every time I'm behind a mic. I like love being, my articles, which are like so meticulously prepared. And, now flying blind behind the mic, I feel like I lose some IQ points, but whatever. I'm taking this advice of this very famous podcaster, and I'm going to do the best of my abilities today on this School of Scott podcast, which, by the way, has 4.9 stars on Spotify, 4.9 stars on Apple Podcasts. So shout out to you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. It would probably have 5.0 stars if my middle school nemesis didn't hold an extreme grudge because I stole his girlfriend in the 6th grade. We would have 5 stars if not for that guy. So shout out to you guys. Appreciate that. Before we do the Exodia reveal, I did want to clarify on something. Last solo pod, I got a lot of heat for this, where I trashed Jordan Mason. I trashed Tyrone Tracy. I trashed Jaylen Warren, which, by the way, might be a cold takes exposed on my part. He just signed an extension. Horrific Caleb Johnson vibes. I wanted to clarify on this. What was with my disdain for these players is just a philosophical position that I hold. Abib Agbatoba, potentially the greatest high stakes fantasy player of all time, also holds. Theo Greminger does not hold. He disagrees with us. But it's this position that basically all handcuff running backs are exactly the same. And when you have these players like a Jordan Mason or a Tyrone Tracy or a Jaylen Warren, they're almost like indistinguishable from a handcuff running back. The only difference is these running backs are going to average like 10 fantasy points per game. All other pure handcuffs like a Zach Charbonnet are going to average like 2 fantasy points per game. But my whole thing is 10 fantasy points per game is basically worthless. It doesn't move the needle in terms of you winning or losing your league. So I believe fundamentally, philosophically, all handcuff running backs are basically the same. And you can't predict injuries. Like no one running back is more injury prone than the next, with like a few key exemptions being like Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, maybe. And with that being the case, it's just draft the cheapest running back because they're all basically the same. Of course, I know, RB2 for Seattle is more valuable than the RB2 for Washington, but you could lump all that stuff in and just like basically broad premise. What I'm saying is all handcuffs, generally speaking, are the same. And so it makes sense to just like draft the cheapest. And so that's what you see with my draft guide. You see a list of like 28 running backs, something like that, who, just draft in order of those. But then once those running backs are gone, do not draft running backs until the last 3 rounds of your draft, and then start drafting my recommended handcuff running backs, such as, Miles Sanders or Dylan Sampson, whoever, who I think all have like similar upside to these handcuffs who are going way earlier, or even these non-handcuffs like a Jordan Mason, who is just, to me, just like basically the goal line back for Minnesota, who's not going to catch a single, like targets all going to Aaron Jones, not going to go to Jordan Mason. And then carries, I still think Aaron Jones is going to out carry Jordan Mason. It's just, Jordan Mason's going to get the bulk of the goal line, but like ultimately what does that come down to? It's like 8 to 12 fantasy points per game. And it's just like, I don't want to waste a draft pick on that. So that's just to clarify what some people were kind of upset about, offended about, whatever. But again, this is best ball brain rot. Like Jordan Mason is not a difference maker for your season long redraft, start sit fantasy league. And so I needed to clarify that. Is what I needed to do. But yeah, we're going to talk about my Exodia plays, not my Zodiac plays, my Exodia plays. And of course, everyone wants to know who my Exodia quarterback is. My track record on Exodia quarterbacks has been amazing, has been phenomenal. It's almost like, with the exception of maybe Anthony Richardson, his rookie season when he got hurt, you almost couldn't do any better than what I did with these late round quarterbacks. But I also think you're sleeping on my running backs and my wide receivers. I think my track record is just really good. You look at my track record on running backs, is like last year, I was like, Bucky Irving is this year's Kyren Williams, and Chase Brown is right there, and a number of other late round running backs who smashed. And we were on Kyren Williams. Everyone else is drafting Cam Akers. No. He was a fade for me. Kyren, I thought was interesting. And wide receiver, who was all over Malik Neighbors last year, who was all over Chris Godwin and Rashee Rice, which would have smashed if not for injuries. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to get into my Exodia plays. Who is my Exodia quarterback? Everyone wants to know. 2019, Lamar Jackson. It was 100-1 odds to win MVP. I was like, this guy's going to win MVP. You should tell me on this. Like, he's going to smash. He's going to break fantasy football leagues. He's literally the best pick you could make in fantasy. People told me I was a madman. People told me I was an idiot. And what happened? Won MVP. Shout out to Ed Teach. I maxed out on the DraftKings app at like $45. Shout out to Ed Teach, who flew to AC, max bet, became a millionaire because Lamar Jackson won MVP. 2021, it was Jalen Hurts. 2022, it was Justin Fields. 2023, it was Anthony Richardson. Last year, Jayden Daniels, my draft guide. I was just like, hey, do not leave your draft without Jayden Daniels. Your entire quarterback strategy should just be draft Jayden Daniels, the end. And like, that's it. That's all you have to know about. That was super badass by me. Shout out to me for that one. This year, everyone wants to know, non-fantasy point subscribers want to know, who is my this year's Jayden Daniels? It is Drake May. Shout out to Drake May, sophomore quarterback. That's the thing you'll notice when you look at these quarterbacks. A lot of them are sophomore quarterbacks. A lot of them have Konami code upside. What is that? It's hyper mobility. It's just a cheat code when 10 rushing yards equals 25 passing yards. And you get 6 points for a rushing touchdown instead of 4. It's just a potent cheat code. And so Drake May has that. One of my favorite stats I put out, I looked at his supporting cast by cumulative team average separation score. It was a first percentile receiving core. So one of the worst receiving cores any quarterback has ever had. By offensive line play, pressure rate over expectation, one of the best and most predictive metrics we have at our disposal. It was bottom 5 percentile. And still, he was great. If you adjust for injury, that one game he left early, he was a fantasy QB1. He was top 12 in fantasy points per game, ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who's going as the QB5. And he runs. And so, like, not just that, like, by catchable target rate, unbelievable. Once factoring in the supporting cast, accurate throw rate, same thing. And then he runs. But it wasn't just that. Is he ranks second among all quarterbacks, behind only Jayden Daniels, in scramble yards per game. Keep in mind, he left one of these games early due to injury. Maybe he came in one game late in relief. So second in scramble yards per game. And then by designed rushing fantasy points per game, he just averaged 0.1. It's like Jalen Hurts averaged like 7 rushing fantasy points per game on design runs. Jayden Daniels way up there. Lamar Jackson way up there. It's just he never got any designed carries. And why didn't he get designed carries? If you follow the Coach Speak Index Discord, you know why. It's because the coaching staff did not want to get fired. They did not want their star young quarterback to get hurt on a design carry and catch the blame. And so they played super conservative. And now what do we have? Now we have Josh McDaniels, who, I don't know if you remember, when Cam Newton was the quarterback, broke records in designed rushing fantasy points per game. And I talked about this a few months ago as my sources in New England was like, no. we're going to get lots of design carries for Drake May. And that's been corroborated. We've seen that with the Coach Speak Index. I've tweeted it out. He's tweeted it out. It's in his Discord. Is a clear, intentional focal point to get Drake May these design carries. And so I see Josh Allen light upside. I'm excited. I'm bullish. I think the supporting cast is way better. You get these design carries in. And so this is my Exodia. This is my late round Exodia quarterback, Drake May. If you don't take him, you should take a big 4 quarterback. But those are really kind of your only 2 options. My favorite is Jayden Daniels, who I flirted with making my Exodia for the second year in a row. I think he wins MVP this year. I just love that guy. I'm sad to give him up and say, no. There's a new Exodia this year. Draft a big 4 or draft Drake May. That really feels like your 2 options. I will say I'm not as bullish on Drake May as I was on Jayden Daniels last year. That might have been like a once out of every 7 years call where it was just like, yeah, that's the only guy. But I do love me some Drake May. So that is your Exodia quarterback. Hopefully all Fantasy Point subscribers drafted Drake May, or they drafted a big 4 quarterback. And so moving on to the running back position. And so just keep in mind the way Exodia works arbitrarily is there's no round 1, round 2 Exodia. I just felt like that would be cheating. I know that's what Matthew Berry does with his ride or die. It just feels, yeah, round 1, round 2. No shade on Matthew Berry. I can't do it. It's just too, but like if you read the draft guide, you'll know, maybe BTJ qualifies, maybe Devon Achane qualifies, maybe Drake London qualifies, et cetera, et cetera. But so we're starting round 3, round 4, and maybe this is cheating a little bit. I don't know. I kind of just had like an Exodia tier for running backs. The tier was Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker, Omarion Hampton. The ones with the little Exodia emoji in their rankings were Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker. Chase Brown last year saw like Christian McCaffrey esque usage in games the team was trailing. He saw 7+ targets per game. In games they were winning, he saw a tremendous amount of carries. And this was a player, Chase Brown, I was all over in last year's draft guide. I had a caveat though. I was like, I don't know, this guy is like very good. I don't know that he's very efficient. I just like him so much more than any of the other running backs on the roster. And the vibes have been great. And it's a great offense to invest in. And then, once Zach Moss went down, he went nuts. He went nuclear. But you look at the competition this year, it's like nothing. It's like Samaje Perine. It doesn't strike fear into my heart. This is Samaje Perine. And the vibes have been insane. You check out the Coach Speak Index. He actually just wrote an article for us over at Fantasy Points behind the paywall, talking about how much this coaching staff loves him. And it's like insane. They're like, they really think he's going to break out on a nuclear level, become a household name. And the only way that happens is if he gets, extreme volume. And I think in a bare minimum, worst case scenario, something like 2023 Joe Mixon, which was like 260 carries, 64 targets. And so, yeah, I just think the volume is going to be there. If you read last year's draft guide, I don't think Chase Brown's like the most talented running back in the world. I don't think he's going to be super efficient, but like I was saying that last year when everyone was like, oh no, he's going to be super efficient because his 2023, explosive run rate, blah, blah, blah. And this year it's like, maybe the volume is good, but I don't think he's going to be very efficient. And now that, everyone else is on the opposite side or where I was last year, I want to play devil's advocate and be like, no, I think there's room for more efficiency just because, he was so inefficient last year. But yeah, I like Chase Brown a lot. I have him ranked above Kenneth Walker. But if I was being really honest with myself, Kenneth Walker seems to me like the better value at cost. And so like in FFPC drafts, if you're watching my drafts with Theo Greminger, you will know we've fought quite a bit about Kenneth. I think in FFPC, to be fair, where Kenneth Walker is going like way later, I think like that's one of the best draft picks you can make. People are scared about the Zach Charbonnet thing. I've talked to my Seattle sources, and I've had friends reach out to their Seattle sources who are even more plugged in the Seattle streets than I am, and they're not worried at all. They're like, don't trust that ESPN guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's the Kenneth Walker show. And if you read Coach Speak Index, you know the same thing. It's like they're obsessed with Kenneth Walker. And this is a player I've always been enamored with. I was, when he came out of college, I was debating with JJ Zacharyson that no, he is way more pass catching upside than you're giving him credit for. And he's a missed tackle force machine. He's a yards after contact god. And we've seen that play out. And now he gets Clint Kubiak, who put a bunch of respect on the Kubiak name because damn, like, his dad was a boss. Every single year he is offensive play caller. The Kubiak offense ranked top 5 in rushing yards, and Clint Kubiak comes to town. It's the exact same thing, except he's also getting these running backs involved in the passing game. Christian McCaffrey, we saw what happened 2 years ago. He outscored the next closest running back by over 100 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara last year, yards per carry trending down into the dirt. Kubiak comes to town, rebounds in a major way, and he's getting tons of screens and slot targets. And so I think we see the same thing for Kenneth Walker. You listen to the pressers, it's like Kubiak's like, oh, I love Kenneth Walker. I'm obsessed with Kenneth Walker. I want to name my children after Kenneth Walker. And this is the perfect fit for him. This is what Brett told me as soon as this signing went into effect, is like the outside zone scheme is perfect for Kenneth. And we saw that his rookie season, put together one of the best outside zone yards per carries and fantasy points data history. And so, like the offensive line is awful, might be bottom 2 in the NFL, but this scheme is what you would want to see for Kenneth Walker, where he would get, jettisoned into the second level, and we can see his freakish athleticism and missed tackle force ability come into full effect. And he's involved in the passing game. And I don't know, I'm just super bullish on Kenneth Walker, a player I love. Obviously the big thing is injuries. My sources are saying not to worry too much about it. And then so next tier of running back Exodias would be TreVeyon Henderson and RG Harvey. And so when my article drops in early August, I always tell you guys, like, best time to draft your team, schedule your league draft is like right after my article drops. Why? Because ADP starts to skyrocket, starts to follow where I was at. And so TreVeyon Henderson, obviously ADP ballooning, but RJ Harvey hasn't moved an inch. He hasn't moved an inch, where it's like, okay, TreVeyon Henderson had that sick special teams touchdown. They both had sick rushing touchdowns, but one jumped 2 or 3 rounds by ADP. The other didn't move an inch. And it's like, how repeatable is that special teams touchdown? I don't think very repeatable. You look at what happened week 1 of preseason. We saw Ramondre Stevenson and LeGarrette Blount roll, had 6 carries. TreVeyon Henderson had 0 carries or 1 carry, whatever it was. RJ Harvey, he's not going to get, they don't trust him in pass protection. They shouldn't. So you lose third down pass pro snaps. That's not worth any fantasy points. Probably loses some third down chip block routes, few targets, whatever. I don't care. It's like the Sean Payton backfield. Almost every year he's been in the league, that backfield cumulatively ranks first, second, or third in total fantasy points. What does that mean? That means the pie's very large. And so how many fantasy points is RJ Harvey going to score? It depends on the slice. But I'm bullish he gets a large slice. Why? Because J.K. Dobbins has missed 43 games over the last 4 years, something like that. And dude, Harvey is so much more talented than J.K. Dobbins at this stage of his career post. I don't know how many surgeries J.K. Dobbins has had. This has been RJ Harvey is one of my favorite players in the entire draft. It was one of Brett Whitefield's favorite players in the entire draft. And he went way earlier than anyone but me or Brett expected would go early in the draft. Ideal landing spot. Denver's going to fuck. Denver's going to smash. This is a great offense, great offensive line, great defense, positive game script. And so very bullish on RJ Harvey. You look back at Sean Payton's track record, it's like, maybe it was just Alvin Kamara being Alvin Kamara, which is to say one of the most outlierishly hyper efficient freak players ever. Maybe a little bit of it was Sean Payton being Sean Payton. And again, this offensive line is great. You can read Scott D. Benedetto's article on this. Scott D. Benedetto was a scout for 10 years with the Browns. Now he's a writer over at Fantasy Points because we're assembling the dream team. And he had Denver with one of the top 5 best offensive lines in football, according to his rankings. Next 2 running backs on my list for potential Exodias. One is Cam Skattebo. And I just cannot get anyone to agree with me on this. I will come on podcasts. I will say, give me one of your Exodias, Scott. Everyone's dying to know who your Exodia. Give me one. I'm like, Cam Skattebo. And they're like, ew, yikes. Yeah, I don't know if I could get on board with that one. Haven't I built up enough goodwill over the years for just being totally alone on an island with a specific player that you can just tail me on a guy and be like, hey, you know what, you've earned it, Chief. I'm gonna ride with you on this one, even though I don't love it. My father-in-law, you've read my article. He studied it. This is his second year ever in a fantasy league. He drafts Tyrone Tracy. He doesn't draft Cam. No one wants to tail me on Cam Skattebo. This is just a player I had a ton of conviction in. My rookie prospect model articles said, this guy is special. He has a skill set that aligns perfectly with what we want for fantasy football. I think he's really talented. I think he's a lot more talented than wherever he's going to go in the draft. This is, for better or worse, one of my guys. If he's my new Elijah Moore, if he's my Elijah Moore of running back, so be it. I will die on this hill. Cam Skattebo. And then he goes to my team, the Giants. How could I not be on Cam Skattebo? In the article, I said, week 6, we're going to be calling him Marshall Chalk. Mark my words. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. But one of my subscribers sent me a meme the other day in DMs. It's like, the Patriot, the Mel Gibson movie, aim small, miss small. No. Aim big, miss big. Or was it aim big, miss small? I don't know. But this is the perfect example. Shoot for the fences. Look at where he's going in drafts. It's so late. I do not have any trust or faith in Tyrone Tracy, who I loved last year, converted running back, but awful as a pass catcher. I think he was bottom 5 among all players in yards per target, bottom 5 in drop rate, bottom 5 in fumble rate, was clearly in the doghouse. And you hear this when you see Brian Dable kind of before the Cam Skattebo injury, you kind of heard him throwing shade at Tyrone Tracy, where it was like, oh, what do you like most about Cam Skattebo? It's like, oh, he runs the play call as it's designed. It's rare to see that as a rookie. So he doesn't make any missteps, doesn't make any mistakes. It's just the exact way you want the play to be run is what he does. I feel like that was shade at Tyrone Tracy, the converted running back, the inexperienced running back. Maybe it's like, oh yeah, we want you to run left on this play, and Tyrone Tracy runs right because he's not that experienced. playing that position. But dude, I don't know. I love me some Cam Skattebo. If this is a hill I die on, so be it. I'm willing to die on that hill. And the final potential Exodia running back is Bhayshul Tuten. And this is again another rookie, which is what I talked about last solo pod, is like, I think that's one of our biggest edges this year is to be dynasty brain. In past years, it was a mistake to be dynasty brain. This year, you want to be dynasty brain. You want to lean into these rookies, untapped potential. Bhayshul Tuten, the GM, before he ever took a job with the Jaguars, said he wanted to draft Bhayshul Tuten. Liam Cohen, what did Liam Cohen running backs do last year? What did he do in college at Kentucky? All he ever did was be fucking smashed. Bhayshul Tuten, freak athlete, smashed in all of my model stuff. I was way higher on him than anyone else. And so like the haters want to be like, yeah, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul Tuten, day 3 running backs. Ugh. When was the last time a day 3 running back did any Bucky Irving, Damian Pierce as a rookie? Yeah, it was what do I keep saying is this year's running back class is the best since 2017. It's not as good as 2017, but it's the best since. And you look back at 2017, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. This is a special running back class where a day 3 in this year's class, or round 4 in this year's class, is like a round 2 maybe in last year's, the year before that. So I want to be invested in these running backs. Is it a 3-way committee backfield? Certainly could be. But it's like, I think Cam Skattebo is way better than a Tyrone Tracy. I think a Bhayshul Tuten is way better than a Tank Bigsby. And Travis Etienne, don't get me started. The dude is cooked. The dude is toast. I think after the Liz Frank, you just look at the yards per carry. You know, he's great as a rookie. Like 2.5 yards per carry, 3.1 yards per carry. And like the way they're talking about it is like, oh, you know, we can get him sweeps. We can get him screens, wheel routes. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Probably a trade candidate is what that sounds like to me. And so these are my Exodia running backs, for better or worse. And keep in mind, like what I'm influenced by is Upside Wins Championships, my self-proclaimed magnum opus from 2020 and then redone in 2021, where it's like you lean into upside. That's what you do. You lean into upside. That's the way to go. And that really is the way to go. So leaning into upside, Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, RJ Harvey, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul Tuten. These are your draft sheet players. And so like, this is my advice to anyone who follows my draft plan, is you print out my rankings and you print out your site ADP, and then you just cross off names off both lists. And you play the ADP game, or you don't want to reach too high on any one of my guys. You want to get good value. But there are some guys who are just such extreme values. You like circle their name and you highlight it as like, no, this is a player I really want. And so Chase Brown and or Kenneth Walker, TreVeyon Henderson and or RJ Harvey, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul Tuten. Those are the running backs. Who is the Exodia wide receiver? Everyone wants to know. Again, you're disqualified if you're round 1 or round 2. So Malik Neighbors, BTJ, Drake London. I expect a lot of Fantasy Point subscribers to have those players. You just can't be an Exodia when you're round 1, round 2. So first Exodia at the wide receiver position also happens to be probably the Exodia of all Exodias, which is Tet McMillan. And this is just a prospect I thought was elite. Things got crazy there in March, April, where you had all these NFL analysts, draft analysts, like everyone but Mike Renner, who was on our side, but like Daniel Jeremiah, Lance Zierlein, all these sort of guys who are like, Tet McMillan's like a late round 1 guy. I'm like, No, I think he's elite. I think he's like top 5, top 10. I think he's super elite. And then what happens? He goes top 10, super elite. What did I tell you? Great landing spot. We talked about last year with Deontay Johnson, which didn't work out for us, but entirely due to off-field issues. The Dave Canales Alpha X role is super valuable. You did see that in those Andy Dalton games. Deontay Johnson was seeing double-digit targets per game. And the one question I had with Tet McMillan was, we really want to see him get that Drake London power slot role in Carolina. We want to see like a 30 to 40% slot rate because he was so good at the slot in college. He just wasn't used there a lot. And so now Adam Thielen traded, Jalen Coker hurt. You have Hunter Renfrow, who has an autoimmune disorder. He has colitis. I have Crohn's disease. Like, I don't know. I can't be a slot wide receiver. I'm just on the toilet way too much. And I have to eat sauerkraut and, monitor my diet. Can we trust Hunter Renfrow in the slot? I don't know. Dude is a filthy route runner. He looks like my cousin, like literally same body composition, height, weight, everything. But freak route runner. Dude, he needs to be on Dancing with the Stars, like all-time great route runner. But anyway, Tet McMillan, dude, I think is the Exodia of all Exodias. There's one player you can't leave your draft without. It's Tet McMillan. I wrote this in the draft guide. It's like no cost is too high. I expect his ADP to skyrocket. When I first wrote about him, he had like around 8 ADP early August. Just acquired all costs player, and I still believe that. Feel really good about him wrecking leagues this year, just like I did last year with Malik Neighbors. And so Tet McMillan. And then Rashee Rice is the next Exodia wide receiver. And this was an Exodia with an asterisk. Really depends on your league. It really depends on, like, if you're drafting against Sharon from accounting, he's not an Exodia. You're drafting an FFPC, he is an Exodia. High stakes league, Exodia. It's just comes down to how much bench space you have, how many teams make the playoffs in your league, how competitive it is. If there's like any sort of chance he's available on waivers, like a team drafts him, gets impatient in week 3, drops him, he's not an Exodia. But in more competitive leagues, ultimate Exodia. On this draft, I'm going to do with Theo and Rich. Rich and I are going to pound the table for Rashee Rice. Theo might not agree with us, but we're going to bully him into it. Next Exodia wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. And this was, again, this is another why you should schedule your draft early August, right after my draft guide drops, because this dude's ADP has skyrocketed. Vibes are amazing. My buddy Ari interviewed Mike Evans, and he doesn't think Mike Evans is going to retire, but he's like, it's either this year or next year. Vibes were kind of weird. It kind of seems like, he's kind of checked out a little bit. He's accomplished everything he wants to accomplish. And he's like really big on uplifting the young guys, the rookies, Emeka Egbuka. Chris Godwin is going to be out till like week 6, if not later. And this is a slot receiver who always won with an elite start stop. So even if he does come back week 6, I don't know how much we can trust him, but the vibes on Emeka are out of control. And then we're talking about this Tampa Bay slot role, which Chris Godwin last year proved was so immensely valuable. So Emeka Egbuka, and then right after him in rankings, but typically goes a little bit later by ADP, is Ricky Pearsall. Many men wish death on me. God, I don't see. Yeah, Ricky Pearsall, dude, fucking got shot last year. First of all, he's basically a rookie. He joined the team. He had this hamstring injury, barely practiced all summer. And he picked up this shoulder injury, barely practiced. And he got shot in the freaking chest. And the dude has the exact same amount of career 100-yard games as Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings, who hasn't practiced at all this summer, who is the wide receiver 1, I think is Ricky Pearsall, who Brett was obsessed with. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. The numbers don't really bear this out. I was like, no. Brett's like, Scott, if you've ever trusted me before in your life, Ricky Pearsall is going to freaking smash. Route running prowess up the ass. Dude's a freak. Be on Team Ricky. And I'm on Team Ricky. The price is just way too good in a Kyle Shanahan offense, a Brock Purdy offense without Deebo Samuel, without Brandon Ayuk until week 6, week 9. We don't really know. Juwan hasn't practiced at all. No one knows what kind of shape he's in. Is he fat? Is he out of shape? I don't know. You have San Francisco beat writers. Grant Cohn, who maybe isn't the best beat writer, is maybe a little clownish. Maybe I don't want to disparage anyone, but not the best track record. But he said multiple times on record, Ricky Pearsall is the Caucasian OBJ. Ricky Pearsall is going to get targeted until he breaks. Brock Purdy loves him some Ricky Pearsall. The chemistry is out of control. And I just love me some Ricky Pearsall. I've also talked to some of my other sources in San Francisco who are can be trusted a bit more, who are saying, well, he struggles against press coverage. He struggles against physical contact, but the route running is really impressive. The separation when he gets it is really impressive. I don't know. I don't care. Love me some Ricky Pearsall, Exodia. And so what do you see here? Again, we're talking about the dynasty brain being a good thing this year. Tet McMillan, rookie. Rashee Rice, I guess he's not a rookie, but hasn't played very many career games due to injury. Emeka Egbuka, rookie. Ricky Pearsall, basically a rookie. And then the last Exodia, which again is an asterisk Exodia, is Luther Burden, who, again, it really depends on your league and your team. If you're in a deep bench league, love me some Luther Burden. If you're not, I don't love me some Luther Burden. It's just I see him following the exact same trajectory as rookie season Amon-Ra St. Brown. And if you don't remember, he was a nothing for like the first 12 weeks. And then he was the most valuable asset you could have had across the remaining weeks. This is the Ben Johnson slot role I keep talking about. Olamide Zaccheaus is the starting slot week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Then I think it's the Luther Burden show. I do not think Olamide Zaccheaus is going to hold on to that job for very long. I think Luther Burden, who was once upon a time supposed to be the wide receiver 1 in this year's class, who Jetpack Galileo, who is a great Twitter follower, said pre-draft is an Amon-Ra St. Brown clone, gets the Amon-Ra St. Brown play caller, who before Amon-Ra St. Brown was a thing, was like, yeah, the slot is the focal point in my offense. It's been the case since I was with Miami and Jarvis Landry was leading the league in catches. It's just the slot is my offense because it's tougher to game plan against and blah, blah, blah. And so he's not necessarily an Exodia. He's an Exodia with an asterisk. But in my draft guide, I said, there's a special date where you have to make sure you add him off waivers and you can't let anyone else get him week after the bye, week 5, week 6. And so just an Exodia name to know for sure. And then there's actually no Exodia tight end, just because, well, there was, and I changed it, but my tight end draft plan was basically this. It's either you go early with George Kittle. The stats I had on him was like, he was basically a top 5 fantasy wide receiver last year. He just had 2 bad games, and they were both like fluky, horrible weather games with like a blizzard and torrential rain with heavy winds. And outside of those 2 games, easy top 5 fantasy wide receiver, not just a tight end. So everyone's like, oh, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. George Kittle outscored them all. Factor in the weather, smash them, putting up like prime Travis Kelce numbers. And then you look at George Kittle throughout his career without Deebo Samuel is putting up like last year's Jamar Chase numbers, like freakish. And so, any of the big 3 are good. It's really just the cheapest of the big 3, but that's almost always George Kittle. So he is like, there's no Exodia tight end, but it's like you have 3 options, and that's option 1. Option 2 was David Njoku. I felt so good about this just because you look at 2 years ago with Joe Flacco, David Njoku is putting up top 5 wide receiver numbers, more yards per game than what T. Higgins averaged last year, right? And then you look at what he did last year with Jameis Winston. More fantasy points per game than Brock Bowers, more targets per game than Brock Bowers. So it's just like, and he's finished top 5 in fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years. So if everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong, he's a top 5 wide receiver. If things go like not even right, but just like not awful, he could be a league winner. I had the Exodia designation on him for much of the offseason. Then I peeled it back when my sources just couldn't stop raving about Harold Fannin. And we saw a bunch of buzz on Harold Fannin, the preseason usage on Harold Fannin. I don't think Harold Fannin's going to steal route share and snaps. Not a lot, at least from David Njoku. It's really more just competing with David Njoku in the same area of the field, those short area targets. I loved Harold Fannin coming out. I just really saw it as like a 2026, 2027 thing. But the vibes were a little bit too much for me. So I removed Exodia status, but that's your middle round tight end to target. And then late round tight end to target was you had 2 options, either Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. Really love both of those guys. Kind of love them the same. Vibes on Tyler Warren are insane. He's going to be an every snap player. We don't really trust the quarterback. Target competition's tough, but this guy's a freak. Colston Loveland, again, we really trust the offensive play caller, but it's again a lot of tough target competition. But we've seen, Sam Laporta under Ben Johnson, was the overall tight end 1. We saw TJ Hawkinson smash with Ben Johnson. And both of these tight ends were drafted really high. Both of these tight ends smashed in my rookie prospect article model. I said like really, really special talents. Tyler Warren had the most yards per scrimmage of any power conference tight end ever, I'm pretty sure. And over the past decade, Brock Bowers came next closest, and Tyler Warren had 400 yards from scrimmage, more than that, to give you some perspective on how good he is. And then Colston Loveland was just on like a worst offense, but by yardage market share, if you account for the games he missed, it was like the best yardage market share in like 75 years by a power conference tight end. And this was the stat that had me on Sam Laporta before anyone else. This is the stat that had me on George Kittle before anyone else. And so that's why I said Colston Loveland is like a rich man's Sam Laporta to me. And he goes to the Sam Laporta coach. So no technical tight end Exodia, but laid it out in the draft guide. Kittle early, Njoku middle, or Loveland, Warren late. I will say, unless you're in a very soft league, I am liking my Loveland Warren teams the most. Just due to opportunity cost. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy it, please subscribe to the School of Scott podcast. Please leave a 5-star review so my 6th grade bully can't sleep easy at night knowing that he's tarnished our flawless 5-star ranking. But thank you for everyone for tuning in, listening in. I will say, if you want to become a Fantasy Point subscriber, that's what all the cool kids are doing. Use promo code BETSMART. So it's like PetSmart, but with a B as in boy, for $357. Amazing deal. You can get access to everything. And so, Fantasy Points Premium is betting, DFS, fantasy football. It's typically 150. And then the Fantasy Points Data Suite, which is PFF Premium on steroids and on Adderall and on all performance enhancers you could think of, is typically $200. So that's $350. So basically you're just paying $7 for the college football product, where anyone who's a college football subscriber is just printing money because our staff is so good and the competition is so much weaker than NFL. And spring Football, same thing. The DFS optimizer. And then surprise, bitches, we just launched an AI tool. Shout out to Ball Knowledge. Only all in subscribers have access to Ball Knowledge, our custom AI. So if you want to ask it any start sit question, it can help with trades. It can help with the waiver wire. It can help you draft. It can help you basically do anything. This thing is unbelievable. We launched it last week. This is what I've been continually teasing, only for all in subscribers. You get all this for $357 if you use code That's Smart. So I highly recommend you do that. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I love you. I miss you. Oh, also Discord. Get in Discord. Discord is so much fun. We're there. All of our experts are there to answer your tough start sit questions, help you out. Code BetSmart, fantasy points. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. We love you.